What is up, Guardians? It's Mekabre, and we're back with another Destiny 2 video. Now, I know it's been a hot minute since our previous Destiny 2 video, and I do apologize, but I've kind of been taking a break, relaxing a little bit in terms of the amount of Destiny that I am both playing and content that I'm making around it, so forgive me. Before we jump into the content, talking about whether or not Witch Queen knocked it out of the park in terms of both an annual expansion and then how it plays into the story of everything that they've set up to this point and what they're going to do in the future. Please take a minute to go down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video. It helps me out a lot and it takes you guys just a couple of seconds. Also, if you subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll know when I post more great content. Thank you. Alright, so like I said, this video is going to be talking about Witch Queen as a whole, looking at it at the expansion level and everything that it brought to the table, and just kind of giving it a rating in some specific areas. Because I feel like a lot of people would argue that this expansion is very much similar, if not better, than what Forsaken was. I've seen a couple other content creators out there put together videos like this. I know some are working on these videos. And that's not what I'm trying to do here. I just want to rate everything that they've done in this expansion, and let me know if you guys agree in the comments down below, because I feel like Witch Queen was phenomenal in every capacity, and there are a couple of things that I would definitely change, but we'll get into those when we get to them, alright? So let's start off with the thing that you have to start off with this new expansion, and that's the campaign. You can't talk about an expansion and not touch on the campaign, so let me just say this. Without any spoilers, although if you haven't done the campaign yet, what are you doing? Go do that right now and then come back and watch this video. First off, very well done. It's not a lot of bounties, which is something that a lot of people always despised about previous campaigns, is it just turned into, oh, go do the 4 bounties on this planet and then come back. And then here, go do these 2 weekly bounties on this planet and then come back. And it's just like, why? There's no reason for me to do this. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of, everyone's time by making bounties a heavy part of this. And that wasn't a thing in this campaign. So phenomenal in that respect. Additionally, the storytelling of the campaign was very well done as we traveled along Savathun's story and found out a little bit more. But beyond that, really, the campaign kind of had you hyped up by the end. Another thing that you would need to take into account is there's both legendary and normal campaign. The legendary mode offering some great rewards for those who decided to work through it, which if you haven't, I do highly recommend that you go back through and at least attempt it. But very, very well done. I liked the concept of the legendary campaign. I ran it with a clanmate of mine. Day 1, we cruised right through it. It was amazing, a phenomenal experience. However, it did scale with difficulty, so 2 of us running it was definitely more difficult than just me running through it solo. And then 3 people running it, once again, very, very difficult. Things are now very tanky. You're not dealing a whole lot of damage, and you are getting pretty much one shot by some of the bosses, or some of the tanks, as you will come to find throughout the campaign. So definitely something that you need to test all 3. I have yet to run a full legendary campaign with 3 people. I did a part of it. Most of my campaign, like I said, was just 2 of us, and then I have ran 1 campaign completely solo and thoroughly enjoyed that. Now, beyond the campaign, there are plenty of other things that this expansion brought. One of these big ones being weapons, and not just more weapons, as we did get 60 new weapons, 52 legendary ones, and 8 exotic weapons, but also weapon crafting, which we'll come to talk about after we touch on the weapons. In terms of the weaponry, very, very impressed. They changed the world loot pool to now these foundry weapons, really getting into foundry traits and everything like that. The world loot pool in and of itself has some amazing weapons. 2 outstanding ones, may I add, would be your Ogma PR whatever. It is a lightweight pulse rifle. It has some incredible perk combinations. Highly recommend go watch Cool Guy's video on it. He has some great combos that you should definitely try. And then the more popular and honestly a little overhyped at this point is Funnel Web. Funnel Web being a Void SMG, a 900 RPM, amazing, amazing SMG, some great combos there. So you have your world loot pool weapons, which are amazing. I believe there are 12 of those weapons in total. Additionally, we have some new weapons added to each of the playlist activities. So you have an auto rifle for Gambit. You have a slug shotgun that sits in the kinetic slot for your Vanguard strikes or whatever they're called, battle ops. And then in the Crucible, you have a 140 hand cannon. Some amazing weapons there. Even further on, you have a whole new slew of weapons that are related to the new destination, the Throne World. You have things such as a new bow. There is a new sniper. I think there's an auto rifle, a scout rifle, a bunch of weapons there. A fusion rifle. That is insane. Get your hands on that if you haven't already. Beyond those, we have 2 new Nightfall weapons. They are kind of new, though. They are returning. Duty Bound and Silicon Neuroma, a auto rifle and sniper rifle respectively. Keep in mind, these will have adept variants once GMs are out for the season. We have raid weapons and seasonal weapons. Those are the last 2 to cover, both of which, may I add, not that any of the weapons previously listed weren't good, but the seasonal weapons and the weapons that come from the raid are absolutely insane. A lot of them are covering areas where we don't have many weapon choices. For example, Peace of Mind. It is another rapid fire pulse rifle that sits in the kinetic slot. Very, very good. Or we have things like Explosive Personality, or there's, I cannot remember the name of it, but there is one from the raid. Forbearance, there we go. 2 wave-frame grenade launchers, one that's arc and one that's solar. One comes from the season and Forbearance coming from the raid. Some amazing weaponry has been added. Don't forget that we did get a new scout rifle with trials, and we got a new hand cannon and sword tied to Iron Banner. Some amazing weaponry, and honestly, if you are mad about any of the weapons that were added, you are just missing out. Now, some of these, like I said, are very, very good, while others are a little underwhelming. But the ones that are very good, you definitely get this feeling that, like, there's going to be more to come. If they can drop this many with an annual release, and the seasonal weapons were knocked out of the park this season, surely next season's seasonal weapons will be just as good, right? So keep that in mind as we're progressing forward. In terms of weaponry, I give them close to an A+ on this. It was just incredible to experience all the different weapons that they added, and each one, like I said, there's so many that feel so good. Now let's turn into weapon crafting. Like I said, weapon crafting was something that was added with Witch Queen, and we didn't know much about it. There's a couple good things I have to say about it, and there's a couple not so great things I have to say about it. The first thing that I have to say about it is amazing. You can craft the role you want, your own role. It can be specific to you. You don't have to grind necessarily for a specific role anymore. You still can if you'd like, but there's a couple advantages to crafting weapons, with enhanced traits being the biggest of them. Not only can you get that 5 out of 5 hand cannon that you want to use in the Crucible, but you can also put enhanced traits on said hand cannon that allows it to have bonuses beyond whatever that trait originally said. So one thing that I personally have been using a lot of recently, there is a rocket launcher, Palmyra B, that can roll with auto-loading. I put enhanced auto-loading on it, and now auto-loading works just that much faster, and it's so good for things like DPS phases. So, while not all enhanced traits are good, some of them can definitely help out more than others. Keep this in mind, and definitely do a little research into which one you plan on enhancing. Now, with weapon crafting, there comes some issues of grinding out and storage space. We had been told that weapon crafting was going to help alleviate some of the issues in terms of vault space, and also that it would be very easy to change your weapons roles. While the concept and actually going in and changing them is easy, yes, the resources tied to changing them not so much, as the grind to change and the grind to get the resources to change is quite ridiculous. Some of the resources you can only hold 250 of, which if you are appropriately grinding, you don't want to then waste your deep sight weapons once they're completed if you don't have the room for those materials. So instead, what do? You put them in your vault, waiting until you then craft something that has to use that, and you can cash in those finished deep sight weapons. The problem with storing your resonant weapons is that that whole idea of clearing your vault is now out the window, as these are purely in there for resources. But B, sometimes finding these resonant weapons is very difficult. Now, we saw early on that they made some changes to the ones that drop from Wellspring, as they just weren't dropping as resonant weapons very often. And when they were, you still needed 3 of them in order to complete it. So you had to go back in and in and in, and then next thing you know, you had just spent 8.5 hours straight in Wellspring. No, I'm not salty about it. But like I said, they've changed that now. It's a little bit easier. But then you also have your raid weapons, which can be craftable via a couple extra resources, may I add, but you also have to grind those out. While the raid weapons are much, much easier to obtain in terms of resonant weapons, I do have a guide on that. Very, very rough guide. I had it out before all the information was out. I just wanted to let people know there was a way that you could get them guaranteed. So go watch that if you haven't already. Highly recommend it. But like I said, it's a lot easier for you to obtain those resonant weapons from the raid. In the long run, weapon crafting definitely nailed a lot of things right off the get-go. But there are some things that needed tweaking, some things that have been tweaked, and there's still this question about the materials. Can we get an increase on the cap? Because what I'm finding is the materials that you can only have 250 of, I don't have room for those. But I need more of the generic material that comes from turning in your resonant weapons once completed. And I don't want to waste the materials that I have 250 of, you know? So I'm storing them, and then it's this never-ending dilemma of, well, I can't get more, so how does this work? So weapon crafting, where it is right now, very, very well done. I'm going to give it a B+ overall. I did think I forgot on the campaign to give it a grade, so definitely A+. Phenomenal campaign. Now moving into the last couple things. The raid. The raid's tied directly to the campaign. Phenomenal raid. Day 1 experience was a little shaky for some people. My team only got kicked once, so it wasn't horrible, although we had a glitch where we'd place a rally banner and couldn't rally, so not so great there. But despite not getting the Day 1 completion and getting up to boss and then just being so sleep deprived that I didn't have enough in me to continue, very, very good raid. Awesome Day 1 experience. Overall, it is a raid that is going to require people to learn the mechanics. But with that being said, it's a raid that you can very easily learn the mechanics. And once you know them, the raid itself is a cakewalk, which I think is something that they've kind of been pushing for. People have always wanted to do a lot of raiding, and when it turns into this whole, oh, well, you have to have 35 plus completions of the raid, and it's the second day it's out, that deters a lot of people. And by having this raid be a little bit on the easier side, it's more accessible to a lot of your casual players. Sure, you do have to learn the callouts, and that's something that's not going to change with any of the raids in the future. But once you know those and you've taken the time to really understand the raid, it is very easy and very accessible. So definitely an A on that. I wouldn't give it anything higher than that, maybe even drop it to a B+, just because overall it's a very, very short raid, and with it not being complex, I get that it's more accessible, but that also means at times it can get a little boring, even if you are actively engaged in whatever encounter you're on. Moving beyond the raid, the last thing that we have to talk about is the seasonal stuff. Beyond the seasonal weapons, which, like I said, seasonal weapons and all weapons in general, I would 100% give an A+. The season itself had some very good stuff to add as well. With PsyOps Battlegrounds being the new seasonal activity, it's more or less what we've gotten in previous seasons, but they're a little bit quicker this season, so not too bad, but not great. In terms of seasonal activity, I'll give it a C+, maybe even a B, you know, the usual. But beyond that, with the story that's being told this season, phenomenal. It played very well into Witch Queen and is playing very well after. We've seen some amazing stuff come from the story, and I'm sure there's even more great stuff to come as we progress through the rest of the season. So season and seasonal story, definitely giving an A. Now, the last thing I had to talk about, and this is something tied directly to the weapons, is the exotics, as some of the weapons come directly from the season pass or a seasonal quest, while others come directly tied to the campaign or perhaps a story part. We even have a raid exotic. Now, overall, exotics nailed out of the park, with things like Parasite, Dead Messenger, and Osteostriga being the leading of the pack phenomenal exotics. Grand Overture not being overly exciting, but also not being boring. Collective Obligation, the pulse rifle that comes from the raid, is not the best raid exotic we've had, but is also not the worst. It definitely has a spot and fits in very nicely with Void 3.0. As for the exotic glaives, they're just mediocre. That's all I have to say. For a quest that takes as long as it does, and at one point was very, very grindy, very, very mediocre. Just not something that is truly worthwhile. And maybe with changes to the glaives in the future, these three will shine. But as it stands right now, just okay. So if you were to ignore the glaives and look at the other 5 exotics that were added to the game, I would give it an A+. But looking at the glaives as well, I definitely think that drops it down to a B+ overall for the exotic weapons that we got. So those are just my thoughts. Overall, I think Witch Queen as an expansion, as an annual expansion, did very well. I would give it an A, a B+ even, whereas Forsaken, you know, maybe it is a little higher. Maybe it's just underneath. For me personally, I think Witch Queen beat out Forsaken, and overall has been the best expansion we've had in Destiny 2 to date. Now, will this change with Lightfall and Final Shape? I don't know. Neither do you. I guess we will see. Once again, if you guys enjoyed this video, go down below, like the video. If you disagreed with me or agreed with me on something that I said specifically or a grade that I gave, let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about this, because I feel like some of the things I said, people would definitely disagree with me about and get a little heated. So let's talk about it. With that, I got nothing else to say. Keep an eye out for another video next week talking about the changes and really just the good things that have come to Stasis subclass as a whole due to weaponry. It's a topic that I hold near and dear to my heart because some of my favorite builds revolve around Stasis in this game. And man, oh man, with Witch Queen, did it get good. So keep an eye out for that. I got nothing else to say. I'll catch you guys in the next video and or stream. And with that, get back to grinding, you crazy guardians.